Okay, so like everyone's talking about Bitcoin, right?
Yeah, it's pretty wild what's been happening.
It's nuts, up like crazy. And everyone's saying it's because of what the Fed's doing.
The Federal Reserve.
Yeah, right. The Federal, like, they just cut interest rates again.
Uh-huh.
So we're going deep on that today.
Yeah, let's break it down.
Like, for everyone listening, this is the kind of stuff that seems complicated,
For sure.
but we're going to, like, make it clear.
Absolutely.
So the Fed, they're like the big guys for banks,
Right.
right?
Basically, they control the U.S. banking system.
And they set interest rates.
Right. Which affects, like, how much it costs to borrow money for anything.
For literally anything.
From buying a house to starting a business.
Exactly. So they just lowered rates by 25 basis points.
Okay, so that might sound like gibberish to some people.
Yeah, it's kind of confusing.
A basis point is just a tiny fraction of a percentage.
Okay.
So 25 basis points is like 0.25%.
So it's not a huge change, but
But it can have a big impact.
because it makes borrowing cheaper?
Exactly. Businesses can get loans easier. People might buy more houses and cars.
But this article I was reading called this a historically risk-on policy.
Right, and that's where things get interesting.
So what's risky about it?
Well, when borrowing is cheaper, investors tend to look for bigger returns.
Oh, I see.
And that often means turning to riskier assets.
Like Bitcoin.
Exactly. They're hoping to cash in on the volatility and potential for huge gains.
Which makes sense when you look at what happened to Bitcoin right after the announcement.
It went through the roof, like a new all-time high of over $76,800.
It's insane. That's a massive jump.
It shows just how much the crypto market is paying attention to these Fed moves.
And maybe starting to see Bitcoin as a more serious investment.
You know, a lot of people are talking about Bitcoin as a safe haven asset these days.
Like gold.
Exactly. Like gold has been seen as a hedge against inflation for centuries.
So is Bitcoin the new gold?
Well, that's a big question, and the jury's still out on that one, but it's interesting to think about.
Especially with all this talk about inflation and the Fed lowering rates.
Right, because sometimes when the Fed lowers rates, it can actually lead to more inflation later on.
Which could push people towards assets like Bitcoin, which are thought to hold their value better.
Right, and this latest rate cut isn't an isolated event.
The article mentioned that they also lowered rates back in September.
Exactly. It's becoming a trend. This is the third cut in a row this year.
So what does that tell us? What's the Fed trying to do?
Well, some analysts think they're trying to stimulate the economy. Maybe they're seeing signs of weakness that we're not aware of.
That's kind of concerning.
It is. And there's another layer to this whole thing.
Oh, yeah.
I came across this quote from Fed Chair Jerome Powell himself.
Like the head honcho?
Yeah, and he said something really interesting.
What do you say?
He said, and I quote, "The election will have no bearing on our policy decisions." He goes on, "The economy is too hard to predict in the near to medium term. We do not forecast, speculate, or assume."
So what's he getting at?
I think he's trying to address any concerns about the Fed being influenced by politics.
With the election coming up.
Exactly. He wants to reassure everyone that they're making decisions based on economic data, not political pressure.
That's kind of a big deal.
It is. The Fed's supposed to be independent.
So it's interesting that he felt the need to say that publicly.
It definitely makes you think.
Okay, so to wrap this up,
Yeah.
we've seen how these rate cuts are affecting the markets,
Big time.
and especially Bitcoin, which is going bananas.
Up and down and all around.
But the big question is, what does this all mean for the future?
Of both traditional finance and crypto.
Right. Like, how will these two worlds continue to interact and influence each other?
Yeah. That's the million-dollar question.
And it's something we're all going to have to keep watching closely.
Absolutely. This is just the beginning of a very complex story.
So buckle up, everyone. This ride's just getting started.
And remember, do your own research. Stay informed.
Yeah, don't just take our word for it.
There's a whole world of information out there.
And we'll be back next week to dive into another hot topic.
Until then, keep learning and stay curious.
See ya.
Bye.